Now, needless to say, the future is IT, meaning to say that whether or not you are going to go into a career in IT, you will need to have some IT knowledge, right? What happens is that there will be an ever progress in IT, right? And so employers and the job industry will expect more and more skills from workers, right? For example, you might want to get literate in IT and be well versed in, for example, spreadsheet and word processing and PowerPoint and etc. While at the same time have some kind of extra skills, for example, in terms of spreadsheet, not just use of spreadsheet. Maybe you can insert formula, you can format documents in certain ways. For example, you want to send a resume, or there's a certain format, for example, for word processing, and then maybe some web editing skills, graphic skills. These are all maybe not essential now, but once you get to the workplace, if you know these things, you can make interesting things. For example, you can create interesting brochures, so you'll be an asset in marketing, not just whatever job you choose, for example, lawyer, accountant, right? So it's good to have some IT skills, because generally speaking, employers seek that aside from soft and hard skills. Okay, now regardless of the industry, right? Even if we don't talk about all of these skills, we can talk about how you can actually use IT and IT infrastructure to get yourself a job. For example, you can use all of these job websites. For example, in Malaysia, we have things like JobStreet, right? We have jobsdb.com, JobsDB. I think that's how it's spelled. But you can try out these websites, and they offer, or what we can actually do using these websites is, first, we can look at listings, meaning there are endless and endless numbers of listings, and it's easy because it's, for example, you don't have to go from notice board to notice boards and newspaper to newspaper to actually find job listings, because a lot will be in here and it's focused somehow, meaning you can find whatever industry you're interested in. You can just focus and go there, right? You can look for job listings. You can assess your career, whether or not with your current accomplishments, with your current level of education, with your current experience, right? Are you at the right level in terms of your career? You can assess your salary. Are you being paid the correct amount of money? Is your salary under average, above average, right? You can look at job listings, of course, and of course, when you find things online, what happens is that you can actually put your resume, and it works for you 24/7. There's not one moment that your resume is not, or rather, there's not one moment that your resume cannot be seen by someone. Any employers can always see your resume. Not just that, it works 24/7, meaning to say that job listings are also 24/7, right? There's always something new, and it's borderless, meaning to say that you can find jobs wherever it is in the world, right? Now, there is of course always also the ease of communication, meaning to say that if and when you want to communicate with a prospective employer, meaning you want to get a job from the listing, you can communicate easily using email. Again, it is using IT infrastructure, right? Not just that, for interviews or just short correspondence, right? You can use things like Skype, right? So knowing technology and being well versed in technology gives you a lot of advantage, right? So even if you're not going to careers in IT, you might want to look at how to use IT to advance your careers or to look for a job, right? Now, once we've talked about communication, right? Or rather, ease of communication, we can now talk about this facility, which is very interesting. It's called the web interview. Now, the web interview is where you have an interview held over the web, right? And what are the advantages of this? Think about it. When you have a web interview, first of all, you don't actually have to be there at the location where the interview is being done, right? So you can work at the comfort of your own home, right? Comfortable. Even if you're trying to look for a job at a multinational company overseas, this interview can accommodate different time zones. There's no problem with that. Again, if it's a place further away, you might be reluctant to go for an interview. Why? Because it takes up money and it takes up time. You know, you don't go for an interview. It's like, for example, the interview is tomorrow morning. You go tonight at a certain overseas location. What if you're jet lagged? What if you're sick or something? So you go maybe 1 or 2 nights before. So you have to come up with accommodation and etc. Right? So you save time and cost. And then there's the flexibility. Flexibility, right? Meaning to say that your interview can actually be recorded and someone else can see it. Let's say, for example, I cannot come for this interview. One of the interviewers cannot come, right? So I can see it later. Or we really like you as a candidate, but we don't have an app opening which is suitable for you. So we'll send you to a sister company again, without having to re-interview. They can just look at the recording of the interview, right? So that's the flexibility of actually recording and maybe looking at it at a later time, right? So there are lots of advantages of um, finding jobs using IT infrastructure, right? Now, because of that, with regards to the IT world, of course, right? A lot of it will be via IT, meaning to say that they will be using IT infrastructure for this, right? Which is why we find a lot of programmers working for US firms are actually Indians, meaning Indians in India, right? They're actually working for US firms. So a lot of these are already being done in the IT world, in the IT career, but it is also applicable to other industries. So please be well versed in these web searches, job listings, and etc. Anyways, back to the IT industry. Again, I say it is an industry which is ever expanding, right? And especially nowadays, what happens is that a lot of companies, multinational companies, will have this department called the Information System Department. And Information System Department in any organizations are responsible to come up with IT projects, meaning they actually do things in terms of providing a solution for the corporation, right? For example, they can come up with a new system, right? Maybe a small system and whatnot. Now, they might be able to come up with a system if it's a small scale system, depending on how big the department is, right? But if the system is very big, what happens is that they have to deal with vendors. So vendors will actually go and come up with a system or come up with a solution. Now, this is of course the case nowadays, meaning a lot of companies, like I said, have a lot of have its own information systems department. But previously, there's a motorcycle by the way, right? Previously, what happens is that regardless of whether a corporation has IS department or not, sometimes a lot of corporations do not have IS department. Sometimes a lot of corporations have very small IS department, and all projects are undertaken by vendor, right? So what happens is that previously the IT industry is somewhat stagnated, meaning it's not expanding as the way it should. Why? Because of several reasons. For example, we have what we call outsourcing, offshoring, and labor dumping. What do these mean? For example, if your IS department Either you don't have an IS department, meaning you don't want to have an initiative to have an IS department, or you don't want to invest in your IS department in the sense that it will not then expand and be able to take up big projects. So it always goes to a vendor, right? So in that case, your organization are actually doing the outsourcing, right? If on the other hand, um, you take your organization and relocate at a different location, right? This is called offshoring, right? On the other hand, for certain jobs, for example, programmers in US, right? What happens is that um, there are lots of foreigners working for certain jobs in a certain country, and this is called labor dumping. For example, in Malaysia, you can see things like in the construction industry, you don't see a lot of Malaysians working there. So that is labor dumping, and sometimes it is not the fault of the foreigners, meaning Malaysians are reluctant to work there in the construction industry. So we have foreigners working there. So it's a labor dumping, right? So asking someone else to do your job for you, meaning someone else outside of your company to do your job for you, or relocating to a cheaper location outside of your country, or having too much foreigners in a certain industry inside your country, or offshore or subcontractor to another country, labor dumping, right? So these are all problems that have um, you can say disabled the IT industry, meaning it has not expanded the way it should be, right? So these are challenges um, in the IT industry.